Hello, everybody. We got another episode of the Real Estate Leadership and Legacy podcast, and I've got a very special
Wonderful.
guest with me today, Jeff Murray. Jeff Murray is actually a very successful property manager and has a very successful company out on the East Coast. And he actually happens to manage our property out on the East Coast. So I thought, how fitting would it be to have him on here, talk a little bit about his experience and how he started. But I want to turn it over to you quickly, Jeff. Can you give me a quick kind of insight of who you are, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Of course, Alex. As Alex said, my name is Jeff Murray. I'm the president of Canada Homes for Rent, based out of St. John, New Brunswick. We started the company back in 2012. Um, I'd almost describe it as by accident, as I describe it a lot of the time, because we were buying some property just like some people were doing back then. I had friends that were investing, didn't really know much about it, had no idea what I was doing. And upon one day, I was sitting in somebody's office that I was actually buying a property from. He had a pamphlet about Canada Homes for Rent, and he kind of told me a bit about it. And back in those days, I was just about keen for just about anything that anybody would put in front of me. And I bought the idea from him. And the next day, I remember my wife telling her that we were in the property management business, and she asked me what it was, and I said I wasn't really sure. Uh,
The
but
first day of the rest of our lives. So there you go.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So um, again, we started with zero properties. Like there wasn't one client, just an idea. But I've always had a good work ethic, and I kind of grew up that way with my dad, and he owned his own business as well. And we just went at it. And back in those days, there wasn't a lot of investment from outside the province. There was some, but not a lot. And at the time, too, a lot of people were moving out west for work because there wasn't a lot of jobs out here at the time. So we were renting single family homes for the people that couldn't sell their houses. Obviously, those times have changed. Fast forward to 2025, but that's how I got going, and we've built it from zero to at our highest point. We were gosh darn near to 3,000 units,
Amazing.
and uh, well over 100 people. We've slimmed down a little bit, as sales have happened and people are repositioning. But we still maintain our staff, and a lot of the people that have been with me now for my longest, I think, is 8 or 9 years now. So it's been good.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing. So, I know you're based out of St. John,
that's right.
but you guys manage properties all over the place out there, right? So what are
Yeah.
some of the areas you guys are targeting?
So originally we started in St. John, of course, and I've always been the type that working with different clients, I have a hard job telling them no, especially when they're out there trying to build their business and they're relying on me to build mine around them. So we started to have folks invest in Moncton and in Fredericton. So we gradually kind of migrated into those cities, and then ultimately you have cities or towns in between those cities. So you've got small towns like Sussex and a place called Petitcodiac, and up towards Fredericton you have Grand Bay and Oromocto and that type of thing. So we started to grow into those areas, and then we would build it to the point where we could justify additional staff in those areas. Once you got to Moncton, then all of a sudden, that Moncton market really kind of in 2020, 2021 was exploding. And then people started to migrate. Of course, when a big city starts to get too expensive, what do people do? They look elsewhere. So then you have, the city of Bathurst, which is in northern New Brunswick, which if you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have thought you were crazy if you were buying up there. But, here I am with over 200 units up there, and people are doing very well for themselves up there. And that's a market that's also too, it was very, very hot for a couple of years and it's died off. It's not like it's, like anything, it's not like exploding up there anymore. But people
Hmm.
are, things are starting to kind of level off in our market, which is something that we were always known for. We were never really that hot market that's always, can't miss. We were just always kind of steady. And for about a 2 year term there, 2021 to, early 2023, it was crazy for
Oh
everybody
yeah.
in the business.
Working here locally in Hamilton, I don't know how many people, because we obviously buy like off market opportunities, sometimes distressed properties, and you're having a lot of conversations with sellers. and it was like one in every five conversations you're having, they're moving to New Brunswick. It's just everybody you
100%.
talk to. It was wild. It was
Yeah.
wild, and we
Yeah.
saw the run up. We saw the run up firsthand. So,
Yeah, and it's still happening more so on the single families, sort
mhm.
of, that type of thing. Um, the Alberta market has sort of taken some of the business away from our province currently. Um, but at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a bad thing as things start to calm down and we get into more stabilization. Like everybody was just on this kind of a steep incline. It was like this kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, it was bonkers. People were buying so much so quickly, and then we were just running around like cowboys, like just notices and increases and this and that. And I'll tell you right now, I'll be the first to admit we were not making friends in
yeah,
in this province. Like people were upset. Um,
hmm
but it was like we were a province of. It was like it wasn't affordable for some people to be able to maintain these properties to the stable. And you know what? At the end of it, our buildings are better for it. We've gotten some really nice properties now of people who have invested. You being one of them, for example, you've invested into your building. You want to have a nice building, albeit it costs money to get there, and
for
ultimately,
sure.
where does that come from? So,
Yeah, I got
um,
something to admit to our viewers. The property you guys manage out there, I've actually physically never seen. I have owned
that's
this
probably in
yeah,
some cases, at one time, that's probably 50% of my clientele. I had one client in particular. They went on a 2-year stretch. Like, I'm talking, we probably had about 60 units at one time before they even so much as saw one.
yeah,
Like
wild.
it's
Which is a good kudos to you guys and your team. I mean when we were dealing with the renovation, and it was no small feat. We turned over, but they were like pretty big
Mhm.
reno. Like it was a pretty big reno project for the. I believe it was 3 units, top to bottom. But it was good. Like nowadays, where you have a smartphone and you can do everything through like virtual video conference, like you don't necessarily need to. But I always think it's funny. Kaylee and I kind of joke about it because we are very involved in most of our things. But being out in our place out on Queen Street, there, it's like, yeah, still never seen it. It's kind of like
No,
a trophy that you kind of keep now too, mind you.
yeah, of
Have we
course.
gotten to that stage?
It's for us. It's positioning ourselves to make sure that our clients have full trust in what we're doing.
Yeah.
Um, we make mistakes just like anybody does in their business. But I've always taken it from the step of, mistakes are going to happen, but how do you recover from those, and how do you fix it, and how
Hmm.
quick do you fix it? Um, so by no means are we perfect. God knows that. Over the last few years, we've certainly learned a lot as our business climbed to levels that to try to maintain that kind of climbing was incredible for anybody. Um, and we've repositioned. We've done different things. Like we had no real like quote unquote property manager assigned. We used to have like just somebody in the office with some leasing agents and people out in the field that would come back and report to the senior manager that would then report to the owners. And then as that began to become challenging, um, we went to property managers that were doing leasing and managing. And they would have like a certain section of the city they would address. So we had 4 of those in the city. Um, that was okay, but then there was always something lacking. There was either, they were either focusing too much on leasing and not enough on managing the properties, or the other way around. So we had to shift gears again, and we sort of got into a nice little routine now where we have the property managers. They have an assistant PM that does a lot of the stuff out in the field. The actual property managers behind the computer, keeping folks like yourself apprised of what's going on, and then the leasing agents are dedicated to just leasing.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah,
we
yeah.
have somebody within the office doing marketing, and their position in marketing is to feed those leads that come in to those agents to go out and close. Um, so the flow seems to be much better. The feedback from owners feels like they're being better kept in the loop. They're more comfortable with it, and we've been able to take that same process and move it to other areas of the province and have the same thing going. So St.
I've
John's
been
always been a
actually
testing station for things, and then we move it into the other areas
Yeah,
to
I'd
scale.
be interested to ask, have you guys contemplated on moving into any other provinces?
We are in Nova Scotia now, so in 2023, we opened Canadian Home Rentals Halifax, and we manage property from Amherst, Nova Scotia, which is right at the New Brunswick border, down through Pictou, New Glasgow, Truro, and then into Halifax, and then just past the Halifax market.
My
So,
wife's family's from Malagash, so
oh,
we're
there you
very
go.
very
Nice.
familiar with the area. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we did that again just through clients that we had in New Brunswick that were investing there, and we've got some irons in the fire that'll start to grow that market even further. So, um,
Amazing.
yeah, so we're happy with that. We've looked at PEI, but it's a little too small, and I just PEI is right there. It's only 3 hours, right? But it's just we haven't really found the right fit. Although we do manage a condo corporation over there.
Hmm.
We do a lot of condominium court management.
Okay.
We have those throughout the province as well, and then we do have the ones over in Prince Edward Island. We can do that from afar a little bit because a lot of it it's accounting, it's arranging and all that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of them are leaning on you for knowledge. The boards.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find it's a like? Is there one that you prefer? Rentals and that kind of management, or condo rentals, or condo boards, I
There's
guess
parts. I
management.
think there's bits and parts that I think from a whole. I just love the industry in general. I think there's not anytime I ever hire anybody or for any position within this company. The first day I tell them I'm like, you are about to walk into something that you will never ever experience in any other job because there's nothing like it. There's You're dealing with all walks of life because anybody can invest in real estate. You're dealing with all kinds of tenants because anybody can be a tenant. You can be a doctor and be a tenant. You can be on assistance and be a tenant, of course. So, and everybody in between. So you could be showing a $3,000 apartment to somebody, get in your car, drive down the road, and show a $500 apartment. And you're dealing with two different types of people with two different, they're on two different wavelengths of sorts. And you got to be able to make that switch, like both as a leasing agent and as a property manager. I find sometimes it's during that training process, it's hard for people to change that guard, because you can't deal with a person of a higher stature, of course, the same way you deal with others. Like you have to be able to do that. Same as your clients. Your client levels are all different. There's some, I have some clients that are like, they're chill. They're like, yeah, it's going to cost me $1,000, but I get it, and that's the way things are. But $1,000 to some people is not the same to everybody.
Oh yeah.
And you have to be able to realize that as a property manager, and you have to be able to come at it a little differently each time
I
because
find property management's unique in that sense because you kind of have to get it from both angles, right? Property
sure do.
management's in the middle. You're getting pressure from the client, and rightfully so. It's their, keeping up to date. It's customer service, but there is a customer service elements to a tenant as well, and that creates natural turnover if they don't feel like they're being taken care of or whatever the case may be. So you're always kind of being squeezed to a certain extent, and it's
You certainly
this
are.
counterbalance always is trying to make it as level as possible in a very buoyant sea, like a
Yeah,
very
and I feel
tumultuous
that
sea.
we've done an exceptional job of being
Yeah,
that type of company.
yeah.
Not only being able to manage in different markets and understand those markets and bring in the appropriate people to work for you that know those markets, but also you know get on the same wavelength of each individual person because everybody's on a different path too. Everybody invests in real estate for a different reason. I started my business off of not really investors; they were homeowners. They just couldn't sell their house. And
Yeah.
then I shifted from there, not shifted, I guess, but migrated, I guess, from there into dealing with investors. Now, some of my largest clients own thousands of units. And you know what? They know their stuff. They keep me on my toes. Like they make
Hmm.
you better.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and other clients too. I just have other clients too that are just they're on it. And it's they're calling you and asking specific questions under specific scenarios. And you know what? Some people would call it like, oh, why do you bother me about it? But it's, you know what? They make you better. They do. Because you know what? Now you can take that same scenario and just take it to somebody that isn't maybe like that. But the day they do pick up that phone and ask you that question, boom, you have the answer because you know it. You're not fumbling with paperwork or anything of that nature. You just everybody needs that confidence in their PM, whether it's
I
me or
love it.
anybody else. Everybody wants that confidence. They want to know that, hey, like you actually do know about my property. Funny
Yeah.
story. I was in Ontario and for last year for the multifamily conference actually, and a client had come up to me who had been a client for quite a few years, and I actually had not an opportunity to meet him. He was working with our PMs, and he had a very good relationship with our maintenance people. So actually, I didn't really get that too involved. Shook his hand, introduced me. We kind of chatted about his properties. Like, I knew about them because I pay attention, and he was like taken back at the fact that I knew some of the challenges that he'd faced and some of the things he was dealing with and all that type of thing. Because for some cases, like people just don't think you're paying attention, but uh, no, we have to,
Yeah.
all of
Having
us.
a finger on the pulse, it's important.
Yeah,
So let
you
me
know, talk.
let me ask you a little bit about the trends that you're seeing right now in New Brunswick specifically. So
Mhm,
I know one of the hesitancies of a lot of people moving into New Brunswick more aggressively, I guess, is the
mhm,
economics behind it. I know that there's comparative to, let's say, Alberta, where you had mentioned already a lot of the labor force gets up and goes to Alberta if that's where the work is, or people in Ontario, BC are kind of looking out there for good opportunities, but when the downturn happens, they might cease. What do you kind of see happening for New Brunswick over the next 5, 10 years? Where do you see things going?
People used to ask me that 5 and 10 years ago, and I think I missed it by a long shot. Uh, so we'll see, but you know, my hope is that we'll maintain that just consistency. I think we did a lot of what I would describe as catching up on our rent prices in the province. We were, as everybody knows, we were low, and I think we're past that now. We're not seeing those large increases going out to people. Not to mention the fact, obviously, the rules have changed. We faced in the last 3 years. I think they've redone the act all 3 years. They've added something, taken something away. So our we're constantly trying to navigate the rules that are consistently changing. Now we have a rent cap in place of 3% in New Brunswick, which New Brunswick never had a rent cap before. But although the last 3 years we were dealing with some variable cap that they just kind of pulled out of thin air every time it seems.
Mm.
So I think people will continue to come to the province. They still are. The rent cap hasn't really stopped people. It's slowed it down, but I think it's slowed down everywhere. I don't think it really has to do with the province in general. And I hope that we just continue to stabilize. Our the Port of St. John container terminal is just pumping over there, and they're paying good money. Like it's good jobs. The Irving pulp mill on the west side of the city is announcing, or they're trying to move forward with like $1 billion upgrade over there. So again, a lot of good paying jobs, but it's
I've
just
heard.
not, it's nothing that you're going to read about in the news, and people aren't going to hear about it all across the province or all across the country. But
Well, the idea of the East-West pipeline, I believe that the terminal for that would be situated in St. John, which would
yeah, it
be
would
a
be. Yeah,
huge
it would
opportunity.
basically take Alberta oil all the way to the Irving Oil Refinery, which is the largest refinery in the country. Yeah.
This would be,
So
I'm a huge supporter of that idea. I think it would be just massive for Canada as a whole. I
yeah,
think that would give us access to the entire, European countries and make
it would change things drastically. It's just
mhm.
like I think for me, like they've been talking about it for so long,
I
and
know.
I've never been one to kind of buy into some of the things that, like, if it happens, boom, all right, perfect, here we go.
Yeah,
We can make decisions based on that. But my God, they've just been
they
talking about it
they
for so
do
long.
keep revisiting it, so
Oh
there
my
is
God, they keep talking about it, and I think it's just a matter of having the right people in the right positions at the right time to make everything sort
yeah,
of roll. But
yeah.
we'll see. You take a place like Moncton, which it's not as industrial, but it's pumping up there. Like it's my God,
Moncton's
the
like when
building.
we drove through it with Kaylee, my wife. It was cranes everywhere and all
Yeah,
kinds of development happening. So, is there any sort of
which is
risk of
good, but
overbuild?
but it also what it's doing is it's driving rents down on those renovated older buildings too.
Yeah,
Like because there's so much new inventory, which is great, but there's only so much demand for that inventory too.
yes,
So, it's not like, the rents are just, they're not rising.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Is like the risk of overbuild, in my opinion, is pretty impactful, especially if you're going through a
Sure it
big
can.
development and you're running your numbers at a certain rent cap and you're not
Yep.
getting those at the back end. It
Yep.
can be detrimental, unfortunately.
Yeah, you've got to be conservative about it, and I've certainly lost business because I've been a little conservative,
Hmm.
in some cases, because there's always going to be that other guy that says he's going to be able to do something for you. I've always taken the approach of, what I can do for you today, I can still do for you tomorrow, type of thing. So,
That's the
but
better way to handle it, honestly.
yeah, it certainly has. I mean, the just even the market here, the rents were climbing and climbing and climbing. We have seen that they're not climbing now in some cases. Like if you were getting 1,600 last year, you probably are still getting 16.
We're seeing it
But
here locally in Ontario too.
yep, yep.
Yeah. So it's,
And
it's
it's, but immigration was a big driver for us for that period of time, and now that's slowed, and that's a big change because they were eating up all those apartments. Like that was the cause of the boom, if you will.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what about you on a more personal level? What are your plans now from an investment standpoint? Where are you looking at for your own portfolio? Are you actively pursuing any sort of opportunities right now?
Um, no, I'm not. I did some in the U.S.,
Hmm.
but locally, no. I'm gonna wait till things simmer down some. I think still the price points are a bit higher for what I would like to see. So
We
locally,
actually spoke
no.
about that, the U.S. Where'd you end up buying?
Arizona. So we have a single family home in Mesa, Arizona that we got in April of 24, and we use that as a short term rental. No different than you, bought it without even seeing it, kind of thing. Ran it all last year without seeing it, and finally I took a week over Christmas and went down and saw it for the first time, and it was nice to see that it actually existed. So it was
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. Not just
Uh,
photoshopped.
yeah, and no different than yourself and trusting in me is I've got people there that I trust. Now I still operate it myself. I operate the guest transactions and dealing with all of that aspect of it. But I've got my maintenance guy, and I've got my appliance guy, and I've got my plumber and an electrician, and I've got all those people, my landscaper guy, I'm at the pool guy.
Hmm.
So I have great relationships with them. They've been absolutely wonderful to work with. So that is that one. And then we just recently picked up a spot in Davenport, just outside of Orlando, um,
Nice.
in a place called Solterra Resort. So it's a resort about 20 minutes to Disney. And the same idea. So, um, again, just building those people that you need every day. And, with the way technology works, I can unlock and lock my house from here. And I've got cameras all over the place so I can watch it. And
Hmm.
I feel as comfortable about it as I would if I was an hour away.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, the power
um,
team is everything. Honestly, I think
yeah, it
it's
sure is. Yep.
eh, people underestimate truly the power of like positive good leverage. So I'm with
Yep.
you. We did two properties out in Columbus, flips. So like pretty
Yeah.
decent sized renovations. Didn't see either of the properties, bought, renovated them, and sold them.
Yeah.
But you get the good team in place. You get good, you have good systems that you can rely on, and you outline your expectations clearly. It's a no brainer. I love it.
I think so. Like I just naturally just being in the position I'm in, I do put a lot of trust in people. Until but I don't immediately coming out of the shoot. I really I trust them with everything. And there was a guy there that did maintenance for me, and he gave him the code of my house. Never met him before, and just hope to God that I didn't just make a mistake. And
Hmm.
and I think you can kind of get a good grasp of people just by talking to them and what they're all about and how they carry themselves. But I've got, I don't know, probably 300 clients, and man, a small percentage that I've probably met face to face,
Hmm.
but ones that I've developed friendships with, in fact, just through business dealings.
Yeah,
We just you just get there, and once you get to that point where you're talking shop and everybody knows we're all driving on the same page, like man, what we can, the money we can make for people is quite something.
yeah, one hundred
You know, we
percent.
had a we had a gentleman buy a portfolio here in the city, and it was a 70 some units. Okay, so a good sized portfolio. Raised his rents $20,000. His rent rolls $20,000 a month per month higher than what it was when he bought it.
Better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, ladies and
Right?
gentlemen. There you go.
Like one of my best feats was that probably.
Hmm.
Like, and I shouldn't say my best feat, like company's best feats, because there's a whole large crew behind me that busts their balls every day to do that for people, and it's when things are firing on all cylinders, man, I'll tell you, it's some nice feeling. Even though the money's not going in your pocket, but it's a nice feeling to see that go,
Sure,
right? Because
for
that's
sure.
a feather in your cap right there.
I agree. I love that,
Like,
man.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, it seems like a great place. I would love to get people in touch with you. So if people
yeah,
are
of course.
interested in the New Brunswick market and want to get some property management support, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
They can find me just about anywhere. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, just Jeff Murray. Instagram at Landlord Mastermind, and you can email me at Jeff. So that's with a J. So JEFF at CanadaHomesForRent.ca.
Amazing. Well, Jeff,
Yeah,
listen, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm glad I finally got
hey,
to
thanks
meet you
so
face
much,
to
man.
face as well, and
100%.
it's awesome. And I think next time we come to visit, which I'm hoping won't be in the far out future, we'll make
Perfect.
sure we grab a drink or two together.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Take care.